Hey everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Unknown. I'm Alex Carter.
And I'm Olivia Reyes.
Ready for another deep dive with us?
Always.
Today it's episode 25, and we are tackling a case that's both fascinating and baffling. The Belgian UFO wave of 1989-1990.
Ooh, that's a good one.
We've got the report right here with us, which breaks down the whole event. And trust me, this one is a doozy.
It really is. This wasn't just a handful of folks seeing something strange in the sky. We're talking thousands of eyewitnesses, official radar data from the Belgian Air Force, and investigations by both military and civilian groups. It really does stand out in UFO history.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. The report says that this whole thing kicks off on November 29th, 1989 in Eupen, Belgium. 2 police officers reported seeing a massive triangular craft with lights at each corner and a pulsing red light in the center.
Classic.
I mean, come on, that sounds like something straight out of a Spielberg film.
Yeah. You know, it really does. But what makes this case so gripping is the sheer number of similar reports that followed. Over the next few months, people from all over Belgium were describing these silent triangular craft moving in ways no conventional aircraft could.
And we're not talking about just floating around, right? The report highlights some crazy maneuvers.
Right.
Sudden accelerations, sharp turns, all without a sound.
Right.
If it was a plane, it would have broken the sound barrier a dozen times over.
Exactly. Imagine this. It's the night of March 30th going into the 31st, 1990. Belgian radar operators pick up multiple unidentified objects moving erratically. These things are so unusual that F-16 fighter jets are scrambled to investigate.
What?
I mean, fighter jets chasing UFOs, that's the stuff of legends.
So did they actually catch up to these things? Did we get some high-definition UFO footage from the cockpit?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. The F-16 pilots did get some intermittent radar locks, but the signals were all over the place, and they couldn't maintain a steady track. Whatever these objects were, they were simply too fast and agile for the F-16s to intercept.
Wow.
We're talking about technology that's beyond anything we knew about back then.
The report does mention something called Bragg scattering, which is when atmospheric conditions distort radar signals. Could that explain the wonky readings?
It's possible, but even if Bragg scattering was a factor, it doesn't explain the visual sightings reported by the pilots themselves. They described these lights moving in ways that defied the laws of physics, at least as we understand them.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So we've got visual confirmation from trained pilots, radar data from multiple sources. What about photographic evidence? I vaguely remember seeing a photo of a triangular UFO from this time, taken in a town called Petit Rachin. That one's pretty famous, right?
It was, and it circulated widely for years. But here's the catch. The report mentions that in 2011, someone came forward and admitted to faking that Petit-Rachin photo. They'd used a polystyrene model and some clever lighting to create the whole thing.
Oh, man.
Talk about a reality check.
It's a bummer, but it also highlights how important it is to be critical of what we see, especially when it comes to UFOs. Not all evidence is created equal.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder to approach things with a healthy dose of skepticism. So we have all this data, these incredible accounts, and yet no definitive answers. That leads to the big question. What were these things?
Yeah, what are the leading theories here?
Well, the report lays out the 3 most common explanations. First, there's the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Many believe the Belgian UFOs were alien spacecraft, exhibiting technology that's light years ahead of ours. Given what we've discussed, it's hard to dismiss that possibility entirely.
I mean, if you can pull off those kind of moves in the sky, you're definitely not from around here, right?
Right.
But I guess there are other explanations.
Right. The second leading theory is that these were experimental military aircraft, maybe prototypes being tested secretly by some government.
Ah, the good old secret government project angle. We've seen that pop up a few times in our past deep dives.
Exactly. But even if we're talking about some super advanced classified tech, the maneuvers described during the Belgian Wave still seem to push the boundaries of what we believe is possible, even today.
So if it wasn't aliens and it wasn't some top secret military project, what else could it have been?
That brings us to the third possibility: mass hysteria and misinterpretation. Some researchers believe the media coverage surrounding those initial sightings may have created a kind of domino effect. People were primed to see UFOs, so they started interpreting ordinary things like aircraft lights or weather phenomena as something extraordinary.
It's kind of like how when you're thinking about buying a certain car, you suddenly start seeing that car everywhere. It doesn't mean there's suddenly more of them. It's just that your brain is tuned in.
Exactly. And you throw in some excitement, maybe a little fear, and it's easy to see how misperceptions can spread like wildfire.
But one thing that really sets this case apart, at least according to the report, is how the Belgian government handled the whole thing. They were surprisingly open about it, weren't they?
You're absolutely right. That level of transparency was unusual, to say the least. They even allowed civilian groups like SOBEPS, the Belgian Society for the Study of Space Phenomena, to investigate and share their findings.
Hold on. For those of us who haven't brushed up on our Belgian UFO investigation groups, what exactly is SOBEPS?
Good point. It's easy to get lost in all the acronyms. SOBEPS is basically a group of scientists, researchers, and engineers dedicated to studying UFO phenomena. They took the Belgian Wave very seriously, conducting extensive investigations and analyses.
So the government basically said, hey, independent experts, come take a look at our UFO problem. That's pretty rare. In most cases, governments are quick to dismiss or downplay UFO sightings. But the Belgians were almost inviting scrutiny.
They were. And that openness helped keep the Belgian Wave in the public eye for years, sparking debate and discussion even outside of UFO circles.
Well, after all the sightings, radar data pilot reports and investigations, what's the takeaway here? Did the report give us any definitive answers about what was happening in the Belgian skies back then?
Unfortunately, no. And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons we can learn from the Belgian Wave. It reminds us just how complex and uncertain the world of UFO phenomena really is. We have to be open-minded and critical at the same time, willing to consider all the evidence without jumping to conclusions.
It's a real head-scratcher, that's for sure. But I have to admit, it's also kind of exciting. It reminds us that there's still so much we don't know about our world and what might be out there.
Absolutely. And this case, even with all its ambiguities, had a real impact on UFO research. It pushed the conversation into the open and encouraged governments to take these reports more seriously.
You know, it's interesting that the report focuses solely on the events in Belgium. Did any other countries report unusual activity on their radar during that same period?
That's a great question, and one that the report unfortunately doesn't address. It makes you wonder if there's more information out there, tucked away in some classified file. Did other governments detect these objects? And if they did, what conclusions did they reach? Did they share their findings with Belgium, or did they keep it all hush-hush? There's a whole other layer to this mystery just waiting to be uncovered.
So to our listeners, if you're feeling adventurous, that could be your next deep dive. See if you can unearth any information about radar data from neighboring countries during the Belgian Wave. You never know what you might find.
And remember, approach it all with a healthy dose of skepticism. But keep an open mind. The truth, as they say, is out there.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Beyond the Unknown. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the unexplained. Until then, keep looking up.